because I know, and I've done enough research to know that I'm very lucky at my age to even be able to invest anything because of compound interest. Like, I understand
Yeah,
how valuable it
it's
is.
huge.
And a lot of people my age absolutely do not.
Hello, and welcome to Financials Podcast Future Rich. I am your host, Barbara Ginty, and I'm also a CFP, which is a Certified Financial Planner. And I am here with my guest today, Cameron. Hi, Cameron.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm very excited to be on this podcast.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, age, location, job, all that
Sure,
jazz.
yeah. So I'm 23 years old. I'm located in Greenville, South Carolina, and I am a aircraft maintainer. So that's a pretty unique field. A lot of people are like, oh, I didn't
Yeah.
even think about that
So
being
what
a
is it?
job. Yeah, so I basically do, what you take your car to the auto shop to get wrenches turned and have things fixed. So I basically do that for airplanes. I work at a charter company, and we are also a certified
Okay.
repair station for Diamond aircraft. And
Okay.
I fix everything from 4-seater planes to like 10 to 12-seater planes. So it's a pretty interesting job, a lot of variance. I get to practice a lot of critical thinking skills. So I enjoy that
Yeah.
part of my job for sure.
Just curious, how did you end up in that? Because you didn't, I think one of the interesting things about the podcast is you hear about all different career paths.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a unique one.
Yeah, so I actually, I was a very high achieving student in school. I actually was slated to and did attend the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs for about 2 years.
Okay.
And I was there unfortunately during COVID, and so everything just was really hard to deal with. I mean, we were locked down to the base for weeks at a time. We didn't know if we were going to get to go home for Thanksgiving, Christmas, like all of those things. So
Hmm.
I think mentally it was just really hard to go through. But I also was unsure about wanting to commit, like 9 years, basically my whole 20s to the military. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I think you've spoken about this before on your podcast, but people will literally have to make these huge decisions at 18 years old and
18.
not
Yeah.
think about the ramifications in the long term. And so I
Yeah.
just
And the
decided before the
military,
commitment. Yeah.
yeah, the military academies, I think there's a misnomer that people think they're free if you get in, and they're not.
Mhm.
You pay with time.
No, yes. So, you see those estimates and it's like, oh, if you take advantage of travel abroad and all that stuff, it's up to $500,000 scholarship and all of this, that, and the other. And it's true. I mean, it wasn't an easy feat to get in. And so the first
Hmm.
question people ask me when, I told them I went to that school and didn't finish, like, oh, do you regret it? I'm like, no. I met so many people. Like, I literally have one of the colonels who helped develop the F-16's phone number in my back pocket. Like, it was an experience that I am thankful I had, and it'll always be on my resume. And people look at that and they're like, oh, that
Hmm.
means you worked hard and you wanted to be there, because you don't just casually get into a military academy. I'll tell you that.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
I dated a West Point cadet and then, in the military for a number of years, most of my 20s. So it is not easy to get into an academy. It takes a lot of work, and you have to do a lot of the work much younger. Like, you're prepping to
Yeah.
get, if you
No,
want to
you
get in, you're
do.
prepping to get in much younger than getting in at 18.
I mean, before I even knew about the military academies in 8th grade, I was wanting to go to Stanford, So that's usually the level of
Hmm.
students that
Yeah.
these academies are accepting, if it's not from some sort of enlisted bridge or that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult on all capacities, right? You have to have the service requirement. You need usually
Yeah.
a congressional nomination. You have to have the academics, the athletic ability. So yeah, that's incredibly impressive. But I can't imagine
Thank you.
it's hard enough without having the COVID wrench thrown in there,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, that was hard. They sent us home for about, like 3 months. And so getting that taste of the outside world again, it was
Hard to go
so,
back.
or yes, very much so. Hmm.
And then how does it work though? Because do you owe back? Do they
No,
bill you for the 2 years? Okay.
so I will say this. You should not go in with this mindset of like, OMG, I can come out of this with a laptop and, 2 years of credits for school. Like that's what I came out with, luckily, and at no cost, like I had to pay back, I think, some tax things that they withheld wrong. And that was like a couple $100. But other than that, I
Okay.
pretty much got out with no added expense. And I was able to bridge pretty easily to, like an associate degree and have all of my gen eds covered. So that was a pretty
That's
nice
good. Okay.
perk. Hmm.
And then so you switch from the academy into a traditional traditional
Yeah, yeah,
undergraduate
yeah, yeah.
program. Okay.
So
Um,
originally I was going to take like a year-long break. I was like, I need to step back and look at things. I've been through a lot in the past 2 years. And so I came back to Columbia, South Carolina, where my parents live. And
mhm.
I was not excited to be back in the South. That is for sure. I am not a huge fan, but I think over the past few years, I've definitely come to love the quirks that are lovable, of course. But yeah, I decided I was between two schools, Greenville Technical College and Trident Technical College. One was in the
Mhm.
upstate, one was low country. So I was like, all right, beach or mountains? And I'd had mountains for the past 2 years. So I decided to go beach. So I went to Trident Technical College, and they have a great aeronautical training center that's like hundreds of thousands of square feet. All of my school is paid for by
Wow.
state grants. And I basically got paid to
Amazing.
go to school. Yeah, it was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. Okay, so then with that training, then the job path, if you're doing aeronautical, right, then you go into
Right,
this is
yeah.
one of the
I mean,
options. Okay.
I went in, but I went in knowing I wanted to do aircraft maintenance. So since I left the Air
Okay.
Force Academy, I had a plan to pursue that. I was not leaving that spot knowing what I had there in terms of career progression that I could have had if I'd stayed without a plan. I've always been a planner,
Okay.
and I was not going to just be like emotional about it and completely just dismiss any logistics that I would need to think through.
Perfect. Okay, so then how long, so you're 23, so did you graduate last year
Yeah,
or
so I
recently?
graduated
Okay.
August of last year. It was again,
Okay.
it was I had to separate, I think, mentally the fact that most of my friends are graduating a bachelor's when I was graduating an associate's. So,
Hmm.
that I think was kind of hard to deal with because like I said, I was always a high achieving student. I had really big goals. Like I thought I was going to go straight to a 4 year. And so I had to just kind of compartmentalize all these different feelings I was having and realizing that they were valid, but they didn't have to
Hmm.
define who I was.
No, definitely not. What do you make in your role?
So fresh out of school, I make 60K, and that is
Okay, great.
in general aviation, which is the charter side of things, flight schools, like all those sorts of smaller operations that you're going to see more at regional
Yep.
airports rather than like
Yep.
international. Yeah.
Okay. And so you have no student loan debt then?
Okay, so I do have a
Oh,
few
you do?
thousand
Okay.
because living expenses, my parents didn't help me
Got
with
it. Okay.
school. Charleston, South Carolina is getting more and more and more expensive. I started basically living downtown and just moved further out to Goose Creek because I basically had to, choose housing situations as they arose. When one ended, I had to quickly choose another. So yeah, I took out a few thousand. And the few thousand I actually took out, it wasn't mostly for living expenses. I actually used student loans to refinance some of my credit card debt, which I know a lot of
Oh,
people have mixed opinions about. But, I got 29% APR down to 5 to 6%. And I was
yep.
like, see, my dad even, he's very logical. He was like, yeah, that kind of seems like a no-brainer.
Perfect. So that doesn't seem very, so two or $3,000?
So here, I actually have a budget and fact sheet pulled up that I
Oh,
will
perfect. We
let
love
you
a
know
good
about.
spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yes, I love a good spreadsheet. That is something my dad showed me a couple of years ago and I've adopted ever since. But yeah, so I have a federal student loan right now that is at $4,302. So right now I'm making the minimum payment 50 because I have some other debt that I'm paying off, but
Okay.
between some credit cards and my car payment, I have about $6,500 more in debt. So I'm sitting at about
Debt, okay.
10,740 right now for debt. And it was
debt,
14,000 a couple months ago. So I've been really, really
Oh,
working
wow.
to pay it down. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then what are your living costs down in South Carolina? Like, what are your
So
expenses run?
yeah, so I actually, the way that I work my budget out, I basically take my total paycheck and I do a percentage of everything and kind of delegate it to different things. So I live with my partner and our dog Sammy, and I'm in the Travelers Rest area, which is a little bit more of a cost. We live in about an 800 square foot duplex. With two people and a dog, it does what it needs to do. So joint bills right now, I'm sitting at about $1,115. So that's about 31% of my paycheck. I'm bringing home about $3,598 every month, and that is after
Perfect.
4% in my 401k,
Okay.
about $225 to health and dental insurance, and then probably about
Okay.
anywhere from 900 to 1,000 in taxes every month.
Yeah, we don't want to forget about the tax man.
No, absolutely
Like to
not. So I'm
take a big
salary, so
chunk
it's pretty
usually.
easy. Yeah, because it's about $5,000 a month is what my pre-tax and pre-401k, all of
Pre-taxes.
that pay. Yeah. Hmm.
Perfect. And do you get a match on your 401k?
I do. So I believe, so I put in, I'm working with the numbers here, but I know they go percentage. I put in about 200 a month and they match
Okay.
175. Yeah. So
Okay, that's great.
my 401k account, I have a John Hancock account. I'm not a huge fan just because the fund diversity isn't great, but I'm 100% in
Yeah.
like a S&P 500 stock index fund because I'm young. I know how to detach my emotions, so I'm gonna go 100%. So that's sitting at about $4,000 right now because I started in September of last year.
Great. That's fantastic.
Yep.
And I agree. I think when you're young is the opportunity to be aggressive if you can stomach
Yeah.
it, which
Yeah.
kind of setting it up and forgetting about it is a great way to not get nervous, is just to
Oh, 100%.
set it up and then don't look at it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you've the 401k. Okay. And then the living expenses that come out to be 1,115, that's your share of everything?
So that is my joint bills. That includes utilities,
Okay.
groceries. We have like a replenishment fund. We really try to like think of everything that we need. We buy like our dog's food in bulk, and so we'll put away like
Nice.
$40 a month total towards that, and that usually covers it. And then I can kind of go down my other categories that I
Sure.
have pulled from that total paycheck. So I've I've kind of been playing around with how much debt, I pay off to feel comfortable but still feel
Mm-hmm.
aggressive because that's a fine line. I feel like because I'm young. I want to go out some nights and have some fun. Like I don't go out often. I don't eat out often. Like my partner and she is very, very financially responsible. And so I'm lucky because anytime I get impulsive, she's like, okay, well, we
No.
just spent a lot of money on this trip. We should probably eat at home for the next 2 weeks. And I'm like, true. Okay.
And what does your partner do for
So
work?
she is actually I always mess this up. She's basically a resource project coordinator for
Okay.
in Greenville,
Oh, wow.
South
Okay.
Carolina. Yeah, and so she went to school for English. She thought she was going to be a teacher. We actually moved to Greenville for that reason. She was going to do the Masters of
Okay.
Teaching at Furman University, if you've ever heard of it. And she
Mm-mm.
was like, absolutely not. I can't do it. And I don't blame her. It's a rough, I have friends who are teachers and I respect them madly, but it is a tough environment to be in right now. And
Yep.
so so combined, we're bringing home about 100K before taxes, which in
That's
this
fantastic.
area, I mean, it's
That's a lot.
great because
Yeah.
and we know we're probably only going up from here. So it's pretty nice right out of school for both of us to have started at that level
Mm-hmm.
because I have so many friends who are stuck in food and bev who are like, I can't get a job. I don't know what I want to do. It's the Gen
Mm-hmm.
Z moment is definitely, it's a time. And I deal with a lot of people at work who are constantly telling me, oh, young people don't want to work. I'm like, I'm here. I show up on time every day and I'm working.
Right.
What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? So I feel some type of way about those things.
No, but I think as a for joint household for your ages, right? To be coming out of school, it's a great income, especially with cost of living, right? So,
Absolutely.
And you're splitting everything you said down the middle or
no,
approximately?
So yeah, our income is about a 40-60 ratio.
40-60.
Yeah. Basically, so I basically just pay 60% of the rent. She pays 40% of the rent. And
Perfect.
then we split utilities and grocery, or utilities right down the middle. I'll throw a little extra in every month in case you want some fun spending groceries. Cause that helps with eating out. If you have like a fun little frozen meal at home, like you can make a little date night out of that. Yeah. No, like
totally.
we both grew up frugal. And so we know how to hack that a little bit. Yeah.
That's fantastic. But yeah, I agree. I think for the cost of living, for the joint income for the household, it seems like a comfortable spot to be in.
Yeah.
So break it down the rest of it for me, because relative to what you're bringing in, those fixed expenses, the utilities, housing seem pretty low, pretty comfortable.
Absolutely. No, I'm lucky.
How are you handling? Yeah, it's fantastic. How are you handling the debt repayment versus the fund spending?
Yeah. So my forward, again, I've paid everything in the past from like $1,200 a month towards debt to like $500 a month. And like in the past, I've had to remind myself, Celine, $500 is still a lot to be paying towards debt. Like
that's still a big number. Yeah.
Yeah. Considering the amount of debt I have, it still takes a significant amount out. But right now what I'm working at is about $792 a month towards debt. And I've worked out basically another spreadsheet tracking, and that should put me at paying it off July of next year. So basically a year from now, which would be awesome. Yeah. And then, so my emergency savings, right now I have about like 500 in my emergency savings, which I know is kind of low. And I know I've heard you speak on the podcast about like that emergency savings is definitely important.
Yes.
But with some others, like paying down debt and everything, I'm putting about 180 a month in for savings.
Perfect.
And then I'm spending about $250 a month. And I just kind of qualify that as like a weekly spending amount, So if it's a 5-week month, that's like about $50. If it's a 4-week month, which obviously most of them are, I get that little bit extra to play with, maybe an extra drink at Starbucks or something like that, which definitely helps. And then beyond that, so this is kind of interesting, and I've never heard of anyone sort of doing it this way, but along the line of my compiled spreadsheets, I have an annual expenses spreadsheet. And so on this spreadsheet, I try to think of every single thing that could come up, weddings, because I'm of that age where I'm invited to
you're in the
weddings
age where you're getting in. Yeah.
Especially in the South, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yes. And so it'll be weddings. I have
They're
a lump
expensive.
fund. They are. No, they are. I have a lump fund for my car maintenance, my medical expenses, like a checkup or those sorts of things. And, as I realize something, I'll add it and I'll change accordingly. But right now I'm putting about $540 a month away into that. So that's not just practical things. It can be Christmas presents. It can be, I know my partner we try to do a birthday trip every year in December. So put money away for that,
Yep.
So I really have
that's a good idea.
A lot. Mm-hmm.
I do think that you're in a unique, especially in the South. I think it starts a little later up north for the wedding thing. And then it can be quite expensive if you're asked to be in a wedding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Been there, done
like
that.
A whole nother. Yeah, I know. I feel like the amount of money I spent in my 20s on bridesmaid dresses and bachelorette parties that were like all different locations and destination weddings. Yeah, it's expensive. It's fun if you have other friends going, because then it's like a mini vacation. But yes, that is an expensive, unique area to be in your 20s when you have like all these weddings to go to. Like 5 weddings is a ton of weddings.
It is. Yeah. Last year was crazy. It was like back to back to back. I was in 2 weddings. I went to like 4 or 5. It was a lot. Okay. So my last My last few expenses. So gas, I spend about 180. I have a Corolla, so love her. She's great.
I
Um,
love the Corolla. I had a Corolla for a long
yes,
time. Great car.
yes. My dad was able to score that for me before I got back from the Air Force Academy in March of
Okay.
2021, before the used car market just went to absolute
Went
garbage.
crazy.
And I
Yeah.
got a 2009 Corolla with 90,000 miles on it for $7,000.
Great. And
And
they're good cars. They just
yeah,
keep going.
I have put almost 100,000 miles on that car in 3 years because I was doing like Instacart, DoorDash, those sorts of things to get me by in school.
Hmm.
And I was in a long distance relationship for 2 years. So that'll do it.
Yep. That'll rack in the miles.
So yeah, gas, it used to be like 400 a month and now we're down to 180, which is great.
Hmm.
And then I sort of have a couple other small expenses. So I allot myself about $162 for weekend trips because I've found that my partner and I, we rarely like to travel. And so once a month, we try
Okay.
to do, like a little trip to Asheville, North Carolina, or, even to Columbia to visit friends. But I know I'm going to be spending some more money. So I want to have
Yep.
that extra spending money there. And I can kind of just divvy that out how I wish.
I have to tell you that I very much appreciate that you count every dollar, which I don't, if you listen to the
Absolutely.
podcast, I normally just do even numbers. So I really love
Yeah.
that you're using $2 here and $2 there, that you
Because
like
I know
really have accounted
exactly,
for
right. I know
everything.
exactly what I'm
Yeah.
over. It's like, okay, I'm $7 over. I need to pull that from another category and make that
Yeah.
sacrifice. And then
Yeah.
beyond that, it's $126 for car insurance, which I'm lucky to still be on my family plan's
I would say
insurance.
that's affordable. Yep.
Yeah, 100. So I do $108 towards long distance travel because, again, my
Okay.
partner and I, we like, and I consider that, cross state travel, or my partner and I are going to France in November. I booked the
Fun.
flight pretty much for free on with points, and then 3 hotels with points.
Amazing.
So the trip total for like 9 days for both of us is probably going to be like $3,000 to $4,000 total. So
That's
pretty
fantastic.
awesome. Yeah. And then I
Yeah.
have $72 that I put towards giving, just towards like nonprofit.
Hmm.
My partner works for a nonprofit, so I like to give to that
Right.
nonprofit. And then I have $35 a month, which is my copay for therapy.
Okay.
Luckily, my therapist broke up with me recently, so it's
What?
basically
That
whenever I want
happens?
to. Yeah, but it's like it was a Cameron. I think that you can kind of come back when you need to, and
Oh, like you
so
don't need to do it on
yeah,
such a
and so
regular
I basically
occurrence.
allow
So
myself.
that's a good thing.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It made me feel good about my mental health, that's for sure. But yeah, about $35 a month because if I need a therapy session, there's some big life
You can just
changes
go.
that I feel like I always have those life changes and they happen all the time in your 20s. So I want
They
that
do.
flex money there to be able to pull from that.
Yeah.
And if
They,
not, if I
they
don't
happen
use
on
it, that
repeat.
just goes towards savings or paying off some more debt
Okay.
or spending. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
sorry, I
So
know it's
you
a
really
long
have it.
list.
No, that's okay. You have it very allocated, like to the
Yes,
dollar, which
I
we often
do.
don't see. We normally see like 200, 300, pretty round
Hmm.
numbers, which is also fine.
Right.
I like the idea, given your age, of just being done with the debt,
Yeah.
and putting, and that's a personal decision. If you heard on the podcast, like some people really don't feel comfortable with that. Some people really just want to be done with it. I'm of the mindset of like, I'd almost rather go a little bit harder for a year and be
Yeah,
done than like have it take three. Because then once that happens,
exactly.
your budget really frees up pretty significantly with an extra $792. Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last 3 years, I've been drinking AG1 every day with no exceptions. It's just one scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes me feel ready to take on my day. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. With AG1, I know I'm getting essential brain, gut, and immune health support with vitamins, probiotics, and nutrients from whole foods. I like to think of it as my nutritional insurance. I know I'm covering my nutritional bases from the very start of the day. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1, and that's why I've partnered with them for so long. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/future rich. That's drinkag1.com/future rich. Check it out.
My partner and I, yeah, we've been together for a long time now. So, even if the wedding isn't anytime soon, like I want to start saving for that because unfortunately, I don't think our families will necessarily be giving that much, if anything. And so completely doing that out of pocket it's a whole thing. And I've already researched, like there are really cool ways you can go about it. Like there's this Airbnb I found in North Carolina that you can rent an entire like glamping campsite, have the ceremony there, like and everything. Yeah. And it's like $4,000 for the whole weekend, and that cuts out like so much of the cost.
There are definitely ways to do it affordably. I don't subscribe to. I had a friend tell me once, you can't do a wedding for $10,000. I was like, I just don't believe that. Yeah, I was like, but yeah, depends what you want. But I think that you can do a really nice wedding, and I think you can do it within your budget. But I agree that it makes it way easier if you plan in advance and set a budget and get creative. I think the Airbnb is a great idea. I've gone to weddings that have been hosted at Airbnbs. It's really fun. And it's a great idea. And unique. Yeah. One thing that we had looked at, we ended up not doing it, is we had looked at renting like a campsite, like a kids camp off season.
Huh.
Which is like a similar concept.
I will have to keep
because they're empty, So once the kids go back to school, that campsite is empty. Exactly. It's a little more rustic, obviously, but it's kind of fun because they usually have like all the activities you'd want to. Well, I like all those activities.
Yeah.
It depends on who you are.
If you don't want to come,
there's a lot of
ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that if you're willing to be creative, and I think it's more fun if it's creative and kind of more of a tribute to who you and your partner are, I think you can do it within a budget that you set, especially with advanced planning.
100%.
So
I agree.
I think it's a great idea. So you could then repurpose some of the money that was going towards debt. I would obviously love to see you do some towards the emergency fund, but then it could also be a wedding fund too.
Right. Of course. Yeah. I know. Once I pay off that debt, especially, which in the past, my emergency fund has fully been, I was using it for car maintenance. I was using it for medical expenses.
Okay.
So I'm really, really grateful to be in a financial position where I can have an annual expenses allocation. And it's, if I don't use that money, great. That goes towards that wedding savings or the emergency fund, like you were saying. I really try to be, when I have extra money in my budget, I try to be purposeful as to where I want to allocate it.
Perfect. And I think the savings amount for your retirement is great. You have a very good match if you're doing 200 and they're doing 175. It's a good number monthly of 375 going in. And I think what you do, I want to talk a little bit about the career because that was in your submission about what you're thinking career-wise. But for the current situation, when you get a raise, I think a really easy way to do it is I always suggest like splitting it with yourself. So if you were to get a 4% raise or a 3% raise, increasing the retirement, so you get half today, half for later.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
Don't feel it as much.
I mean, part of that, my plan essentially, I very much for a few months was hardcore going, the FI life kind of approach. And I wanted to be like done working at age 40. I was like, working a blue collar job, I'm sure that didn't help with that sort of mentality. My bones already feel like they're getting old and I'm not even a quarter of a century old. So that'll definitely affect that mentality for sure. But, that extra 800 after I pay off that debt, I want to put, an extra 100 or 200 towards the emergency fund. I want to do a 10% 401k contribution and then add some more into my Roth, if I'm in the financial position, because I know, and I've done enough research to know that I'm very lucky at my age to even be able to invest anything because of compound interest. Like I understand how valuable it
It's
is.
huge.
And a lot of people my age absolutely do not.
No, or they're in a position where compounding interest is working against them, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate, where they have because of the debt. And so it's like really hard to flip that scenario because you have to be so focused on paying off the debt, which there's only so many dollars to go around, especially in the beginning of your career, right? And as you brought up, it's a really fun time in life to be in your 20s, but it also means there's like a lot of life events happening, right? You have other people who are going to be graduating, people getting married, and people are moving, right? There's a lot of figuring out in your 20s. And
It's
so you're trying to spread all those dollars amongst everything. But no, I think from a compounding of interest standpoint, starting at your age, which I also started saving for retirement at 22, just barely 22.
Yeah, I was 22 as well when I started.
It's amazing.
It's
now
great.
I'm going to be 40 this year, which goes real fast, by the way.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. I made it. No, but I think I survived. So that the money's in your 20s, you don't have to put a lot away, right? It's just about participating because of the compounding of interest effect. And really between now and 30, I would strive to keep increasing it, but not be stressed about it, right? I wouldn't stress about it. You're already contributing. You have a good match. But the more you can do before you're 30, it's shocking how much the time effect happens.
The rule of 72, I am aware.
Yep. My favorite rule.
Yes, it's such a good rule.
One of the,
if it's in your favor.
Yeah, if it works for you, it's so incredibly powerful. And you're right. You're correct that most people are not in the position or don't understand it yet about the benefit of starting really young. And unfortunately, it's almost impossible to catch up. So if you had a twin and she started at 32, it's almost impossible to catch you.
Yeah. And I think on that note of increasing without stressing myself out in terms of, contributions to my 401k, Roth, all of that, I love numbers. I love running and crunching the numbers. So I have another spreadsheet that when I was in that FI mindset, I basically did side by side what it would look like for my budget to put 10% towards my 401k, 15, 18, and basically just went up all the way, to like 25 to 30%. And then I did, some added Roth on top of that. And it was super interesting because I took all of that and I ran it on a compound interest calculator, and I saw how different the results would be and put that in my spreadsheet. And so I don't know if this is the golden number, but for my salary and all of that, if I was okay with being a little bit more aggressive, I figured out that 18% in my 401k would be like, it would set me up to be golden basically by the time I'm 40.
Yeah. I mean, 18% from 23 on is a big number.
Yeah.
Especially with the match. But there's always a trade in life, right? Always a trade-off in life. Everything is a seesaw. So to do 18%, especially pre-tax, you feel it a bit less, as you know. There is a trade, right? There will be less money for other parts of your life. And so I think where you're at is really good. I think you can continue to increase it. The fact that you understand the compounding of an interest is really the most powerful piece of everything, honestly, because when you get a raise or you have excess money, you'll know to increase it. And so there is the aspect of you will never have your 20s back again.
Yeah.
Doesn't
and
happen,
I mean, that was part
right?
of my decision with leaving the Air Force Academy. I probably would have become a C-17 pilot and traveled the world, and done all of those cool stuff. But as we keep talking about the trade-offs, for me at that time, I understood on a fundamental level. And I think this is with me, being an immigrant. I'm from South Africa. Like, I moved here when I was about 6 years old, that my autonomy means everything to me. And as cool as a career in the military can be, you lose that autonomy as soon as you sign your name on that line. And I just didn't. I was lucky that I could back out, because I know, if you enlist, it's like, all right, 6 years, there we go, or 4 years, and so I would have had a lot less flexibility in that sense. But this was a traditional 4-year program. It was just under the military academy, category. And so I was just lucky that I could say, you know what, I gave it the full 2 years basically before commitment, and this is not for me.
Yeah, so I think it's the same situation kind of now with your 20s, which is I think you're doing a good job paying down debt and also contributing to the 401k, and you still have enough bandwidth to enjoy yourself, right?
Yes.
So as much as the spreadsheet's super attractive, if you just did 18%,
Yeah.
you will give up a social life, right? Like you
Yeah.
will not be able to do the weekend trip or participate in weddings. So you will be saying no to other things because you said yes to that. And that's okay, right? Everyone has to pick, what works for them. But I think knowing that you're starting so young and that you have a lot of upward mobility, you can increase down the line. I think doing something more in the middle than extreme, right, is probably better.
And that's why I took a step back. And that's why I honestly took the percentage based approach to be like, okay, this is the percentage of my paycheck that absolutely has to go towards bills, utilities, gas, etc. But now I'm in more control. I have more control to decide, okay, at this point in my life, because I started this whole percentage program, we'll call it, a couple, literally 3 or 4 months ago. And I've changed it every single month to adjust for my lifestyle at that moment. And I've kept true to the basic percentages. I've flexed a bit more in certain areas. Honestly, I have flexed more in, the spending and those sorts of things to go lower, because I was at that point where I felt like, okay, I can comfortably say that I can spend and stick to $50 a week right now. But if there's a certain month in my life, because I'm in my 20s, or I know that that's a heavy wedding month for some reason, people love it. I can basically
June,
know
probably.
that. Yes, literally. Luckily, I've avoided any June weddings. I was invited to a May one, and I respectfully declined because we had been traveling for like 6 weekends in a row, and I did not know the person well enough that I felt like they would miss me necessarily. So I said, thank you for the invite, but I'm going to stay home.
Yeah, which you can always say no. Like you can still be, you don't always have to say yes. I think there's a lot of pressure in your 20s to show up for everything, and you don't have to. If it doesn't make sense financially, you can just say, thank you very much for the invite. Wish we could be there, but we can't.
And you can even Venmo them a little wedding gift if you want. You know, like you can be
and
there.
Say we'd love to
ways.
Go get a dinner later and celebrate privately. There's ways to still be supportive without screwing up your budget. Because there's a lot of invites when you're in your 20s. It's fun.
Absolutely.
But I love that you brought that up. Okay, so let's pivot a little bit. And in your submission, you had talked about. So did I answer your questions? We went through your budget, your expenses. I feel like you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Prioritizing. But then you wrote something else in your submission, which I'm assuming maybe we should chat about.
Yes. So I kind of laughed about being in blue collar work, but I don't necessarily, going into it, especially because this was something that I didn't have to put that much time into, like it was a 2-year program, it wasn't ridiculously long. It felt like something that I would enjoy. I did enjoy it, and I do enjoy it most of the time, but I understood that it was not something that I wanted to do unless I really couldn't think of anything else for 20 to 30 to 40 years, and so recently, since I, have been in the field working full time for almost a year now, I think anytime that year comes around, you're always kind of like, okay, let's reanalyze. Or if you're doing it right, you are hopefully reanalyzing critically. Because I think people can easily be like, oh, I've been here for 4 years. That's crazy. And I just didn't want to get complacent like that. So I've just kind of realized, we had some unfortunate things happen. 2 months into my first full-time job in this field, our maintenance hangar burned to the ground. Like, literally went up in flames, and there was almost nothing salvageable in the hangar. And that was tough. Being like, oh, wow, okay. Just as I was starting to get in the groove and understand the company and literally just burned to the ground. And I just had to step back and be like, okay, this is going to be my life for the next few months, years, like however long it takes to rebuild this company. And I don't know if you're familiar with, any sort of aspects of city planning, airport planning, those sorts of things, but this board comes together anytime these decisions like building a hangar. Because just to give you perspective, that hangar had been there for like 50 plus years. It was that old and hadn't been revisited since, pretty much. So this board comes together and everyone has to, the contractors, the people who sit on the board, that, like everyone has to agree on getting this thing up. And I hear different things every single day. Right. Exactly. Probably. Exactly. Yeah, and it has to be unanimous. Yeah. It has to be unanimous. And they have to be like, okay, yes, we'll move to the next step. Because if the contractor has a problem, sorry, back to the drawing board. And so I've heard, we'll have a new hangar up in 18 months. We'll have a new hangar up in 24 months. And then like, just for reference, they wanted to get a fuel farm, which basically allows the company to fuel their own planes because they can just go get the truck, fill up the airplanes with fuel. And I believe it had taken them like 8 years from the conception of the idea to putting the fuel farm in to get it actually built. And so that kind of
that's a long time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so a little bit of instability then, or a lot of instability, basically, right?
For the past 6 months since that happened, probably, oh my gosh, like, I guess 8 months at this point. That's insane. I have been dealing with just inefficiency. As much as I love my CEO, he's a great guy. He's got his head in 50 different places.
Mm-hmm.
I basically feel like he's not doing or taking the right steps to prioritize what maintenance needs. And the charter service is what makes him easy money. Maintenance can make him money, but if we're doing maintenance on our own planes, it's not always super lucrative, especially if we're doing stuff like removing cylinders or engines to send to an overhaul shop and they make the money. And then we just use the labor to put the engine back on the plane, and it's relatively inexpensive. Those decisions are affecting how I am able to do my job. And it gets to me on a daily basis, just for example, we have to pull an engine from a plane to send to overhaul. And we told the CEO, okay, we need a engine stand that is X amount of inches tall. Okay, cool. Okay. The stand comes in, it's the wrong height. And we tell him it's the wrong height. And it's basically just like, okay, build it anyways and see what happens. And these decisions kind of compound. And, like those sorts of things, that is what makes me think, okay, is this the industry? Is this company? So I feel like before I make a career pivot, if I'm interested in doing that, which I am, I feel like I need to experience life somewhere else, right? Like working somewhere else to see, okay, is it more organized here? Does that make me enjoy the job more? Like all of these different aspects that you really have to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it sounds like it's a smaller to mid-sized company. Is that correct?
It is. Yes.
Yeah. So I do think from personal experience, smaller to mid-size can be a little bit more disorganized and less efficient than a larger corporation where there's pros and cons, right? There's more structure, more efficiencies, potentially more layers of management. So that could always slow things down depending on the role, on approval processes. So I think it's smart though to try. I think what's important about your 20s is to try things out, right? And find what you like and don't like. So
yeah, exactly.
So you're thinking about switching?
Right. So if I actually have applied to and technically interviewed at a different company. I'm waiting to hear back. It's been about 2 weeks now, but some of the people I know who work there say that it's been kind of slow. So that might be impacting their decision for hiring new people. But I'm also not wanting to necessarily take that new job if, conditions maybe will improve at this job, or if I can get a raise, like those sorts of things. Because I jumped jobs in my schooling era so many times, and that just leads to burnout, I feel like. when
Yeah.
you're like, oh,
Learning
I
new
don't like
people,
it,
new
I'm gonna move.
management.
Right, exactly. And so if I don't stay in the field though, as I mentioned in the submission, I really, really enjoy finance in general and everything, personal finance specifically, but I'm always interested in learning anything that I can about investing, about, you know, building your budget, about like the emotional aspects that affect how people use their money. And like it's just fascinating to me. You know, when I think about something I could get passionate about, it's that. And I've
Hmm.
done a ton of research into, doing something like becoming a CFP or becoming a CPA. You know, like I always enjoyed even accounting in school. And I know Southern New Hampshire University, they have a ton of programs. They even have a finance program that has a CFP focus that basically lets you sit to take the exam. And I've heard some people
Exam.
say, like you should probably take a couple extra courses to feel as prepared as you should be. But I also know it's not a decision I want to make lightly because I know how much goes into becoming a CFP. I know if you pass the test, that doesn't mean you're a CFP. You still have the years afterwards that you have to accrue hours and all of that. So I don't want to make that decision lightly if I make it. You know what I mean? If you pass the test, that doesn't mean you're a CFP. You still have the years afterwards that you have to accrue hours and all of that. So I don't want to make that decision lightly if I make it. You know what I mean?
Hmm. So I will say is a little pivot with career here, but I think that personal finance is a great space. I definitely think that we need more diversity in the space. It's
Agreed.
predominantly, I think it's like 80% older males.
Sounds like my
So you
field.
just have, yeah, I'm sure probably is very similar.
I feel right at
And I think
home.
it's, yeah, you'll feel right. I know. I worked on Wall Street, so it was like, oh, older guys, like perfect. That's what I'm used to.
Great.
No women, wonderful. Um, so I think we need more diversity in that. Also, the CPA is a wonderful exam. I think a wonderful credential. It's often you see people get the CPA and then go work for a big accounting firm. There's not a ton, and I think this is a huge opportunity. There are not a lot of young people that are going into tax returns, right? Like to run a
Yeah.
tax practice.
Right.
And there's a lot of those that are going to be for sale. They're right now what I'm seeing in a very small marketplace is I'm seeing big companies do roll ups. So they're just buying all the smaller shops that are like two to
Right.
four CPAs. And
That
that's a
kind of
very
like a
lucrative
private
business. You can,
equity thing or sort of
no,
that
just
that
more like
acquiring.
smaller to mid-sized businesses buying the
Okay.
smaller business. So,
Oh, okay.
like for
Okay, I gotcha.
instance, like let's say we had five small CPA firms, like two to three people. I hate to say it, but guys, I don't know if
Yeah.
there's any women.
Dudes,
Uh,
finance bros.
dudes. Yeah. And they're older. They want to retire. They don't want to work as much. And so like one conglomerate will come in, and this is like a regional firm, not even a national
Okay.
firm, will come
Okay,
in.
okay.
Like in our area, one firm came in and bought, I think, all five of them, every single one.
Okay.
So
Wow.
now your option to get your tax return is like that company or the one person who hasn't retired, like the one
Yeah,
person who like
absolutely.
didn't sell and hasn't retired. So I think that's a huge opportunity if you like tax. I also think it's an interesting lifestyle because you
I've
will be
heard.
very busy and probably work 7 days a week from probably January, February through tax filing. If you do businesses, you'll have returns through September. If you don't do businesses, you could probably finish up if you just do personal returns. Some people will do extensions. So you kind of have like a busy 6 months and probably like a pretty chill 6 months, depending on how you
Yeah.
structure your
Six
business.
on, six off.
I think it's a, yeah, I think it's a really interesting business model. Can be quite lucrative if you're willing to have like a ebb and flow. I kind of like the idea personally. I'm not a consistent good worker. Like I have times where I'm really productive, times where I'm not as productive. So I've always
I
worked my schedule
agree.
that way.
Yeah.
So I think it could be a very attractive lifestyle. You could build a very big business. Also, if you own the business, you're in control of like how many clients do you take? How big do you make it? How small, like you have a lot of control. So I
Right.
really always encourage young people, if you like personal finance and you like accounting is a different animal, but if you like that, I think that's a very interesting career path. And I think there's a ton of opportunity if you look at the landscape and the average age of a CPA doing personal tax returns. I think there's a huge opportunity to buy a business. I'm probably
Yeah.
get a deal because there's not, right, there's not going to be enough buyers. And if you have a good work ethic and are willing to put in the hours that are necessary for, because you can't tell somebody like, oh, I'm not working today, because there's a deadline, right? The government has implemented a deadline. So you have to work around that deadline.
Absolutely.
I also obviously really like the CFP. That's what I have. That's what I did. I don't like tax returns. I want nothing to do with that.
See, I have a feeling like I could do them if I like, you know, I have the aptitude. I could do the training, but yeah, I think I want to work with people. I enjoy that aspect of it a lot. And I agree, like the diversity aspect, it's just so cool to know, like, okay, if I entered this field, I'd be one more woman, like solidarity.
Yeah. And there's not, you know, the average age, right? So when I started, it got into this field, it was just about to turn 29, which for Wall Street felt very old because high burnout rate.
Absolutely.
But for personal finance, I was like so young, you know, I was like, oh, this is fun because I felt old on the trading floor because the interns were like 22 and I was 29. So I was like old. And then I go to this field and they're like, oh, are you like with your dad? And I'm like, no, I own the business. What do you know with my parent? Or like, are you an assistant? And I was like, no. Skews higher for age wise, which you can take two ways, right? I always like to take the positive spin on things. Like you can either say, oh, that's not going to be as fun because I'm not going to have as many, I'm going to go to conferences and I'm not going to have anyone to hang out with or, you know, right? Or you could look at it on the flip side and say, well, that's obviously an opportunity because I'm different, right? Because
I was going to say,
traditional.
I've rarely, I will say, even being part of a smaller business who is definitely, you know, more conservative leaning and like, I don't necessarily align with their ideals in that way. I have simply come in with a teachable spirit. Like that is something that my parents instilled in me. And I think older people, you know, even if they look at you and have an opinion of you based on how you look, as soon as you open your mouth, and you show them, hey, I'm here, I want to learn, I'm ready to learn, they will take you under their wing because they know, oh, I'm old and I want this field to flourish, you know, like simply put.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And
people.
They've done this, the right people. Yeah. And they've done the studies, like there's just not enough, the big banks have done that. There's just not enough young people coming into, the accounting field and the personal finance field. There's just not enough young people. I don't know why. I think it's a great field. What I will say that I've seen is it takes a bit to ramp, right? Like, so there is a foundation that you need to build, and that sometimes
and
is
getting
not
that client base.
Yeah, and also your skill set, right? And so I think what I've seen a lot owning a business is people come in and they want to be in the role where they're working with somebody who has $1 million. That's great. The person with $1 million doesn't want to work with you, right? Until you have a certain skill set.
The credentials.
It's a mismatch. Yeah, you have to have the credentials and a bit of the experience of like, how do you handle certain scenarios, right? How do you advise on certain scenarios if you haven't done one yet, right? And they know, people can sniff out if you've had the reps or not, right? If you know how to handle an issue with a trust or an estate issue, right? And so I always like to be very aggressive. And what I found, which is in certain roles, there isn't that, you don't have as much of a build for foundation and skills, right? Like, so for instance, on Wall Street, they just throw you right in. You either make it or you don't, right?
Figure it out.
Really, yeah, you'll figure it out. You're either going to be fired or you won't be fired. And we'll find out quarterly whether you're here or you're not here. So it is what it is. And they don't worry about like whether you have the skills or not. Like you're either going to survive and bring on clients or you're going to get fired at the end of the quarter. So super easy. It's not the same animal when you're dealing with personal finance because there's that relationship aspect that needs to be there. And so I think it's just a longer runway to get to where you want to go. I think you can expedite it in certain ways, but I think that, and I hate saying this because this wouldn't have been attractive if someone told me this. Yeah, I don't listen. So I was like, well, I can do it in 2 years. And people were like, no, you can't. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it in 2 years. I just think it takes a little bit of time to get the skill set because there's so many things that are thrown at you when you're dealing with people and dealing with people's money. Like
Right.
Every week I see new scenarios, which I would have never guessed 11 years later.
No. And the emotional aspect, people get emotional about their money. And if something goes wrong in their eyes, right? Even I imagine like on the investment side of things, if they like open their portfolio and they're like, why do I have 20,000 less dollars? Like people, when they aren't thinking in that way and they just kind of want to hand it over and be like, make me more money. You know, that part does feel a little bit scary. I'm not saying I wouldn't be up to the challenge, but yeah.
Yeah, so what I will say, what I find specifically for women, I don't know for men, what I find for women is usually the reason women don't like the field or have told me they don't not interested is because of the investment component. Now, the investment component, just because of exactly what you said. And I do think that women tend to be a bit more empathetic just as a gender. Right. And
Agreed.
So I think we care a bit more than maybe the men in a different way, that it's,
you don't want to let people down more. It's ingrained in us. It's a societal thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I would feel bad. Now, interestingly enough, my assistant, she said she talked to an advisor who's like successful. And she's like, oh, well, like, what do you think? The market might be going down. We might have a recession. And he's like, I don't worry about it. It goes up, it goes down. I don't think about it.
That's the nature.
And I was like, that's the nature, right? Like, I actually worry. Like, what if your account goes? Like, I know it might go down, but I actually stress about that. And so like, I just think
that there's a difference between hearing that and understanding that. Like, and most people, they will not let themselves understand that. And that's your job, is to try to make them understand that.
Yep. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I think that women bring a great alternative. I think that men are phenomenal advisors and you can have a great advisor. I think it just brings a little bit, it depends on what you want, who you want to work with, right? And so I think women have a different spin on it. And I do think that sometimes women are more intimidated by the career because of the investment component. And I will say that was one that intimidated me. It's one thing to have an institutional client not make money. It's another thing to have somebody not make money and change their retirement date, right? To tell somebody like, okay, you can't retire.
That's the personal
July.
Component.
Yes. And I feel like there's more of an ownership there because you see the impact. And so I will say, though, even though that part's intimidating, there's very good ways of overcoming that and making sure that you can handle it and feel comfortable with it. But I do think it's a great career trajectory. I don't think we have enough young people. We don't have enough women. We don't have enough diversity in general. I think that as long as you're willing to give yourself a longer runway than some other roles, it's not an immediate overnight success. It just can't be with the relationship aspect. And with, if you're going to be handling people's money, you have to have a very good skill set in a lot of areas of personal finance, not just investments. Yeah. And so like learning that all the components is, as you pointed out, the great thing about the CFP is once you pass the exam, which is very difficult, you are not eligible to use the designation until you have the work experience, because that work experience is just so valuable in attaining the skill set, that practical knowledge.
To kind of branch over to the industry I'm in, I had to take 15 tests to get my license. 15. And it's different. It's not the same for everyone because there's so many ways to get into this field. If you're ex-military, if you went the apprenticeship route, but in the same way that as a CFP, you have to accrue those hours. I couldn't just test for this. I had to do my route that I chose was 24 months of schooling and learning how to, starting from the basics and what hardware is and how it's named, all the way up to removing and overhauling engines, and so and now I'm learning, I'm always learning in this field because now I'm in my job. Now I have to learn how to be responsible for these planes. They take off. They don't just sit in the hangar at school. They take off. That's terrifying when I think about it a little bit too much. But I haven't gotten into too much trouble yet, so I think I will be okay.
Yeah, but it's similar in that like there's a lot of ownership. Like, so if someone comes in your office and you make a recommendation, like you have to be comfortable that you made the right recommendation, right? With the same, I would actually think the plane thing would make me more nervous, but it's all relative.
Right. So
I'd be like, well, I hope I really like wrench that on properly and everything's going to stay attached.
Yep. Because sometimes you wrench something on and there's like another component that's in the way and you're like, well, I sure hope it'll stay.
It stays
When
together.
it's in the sky,
Stays
because
together.
you can pull your car over on the side of the road, but you sure cannot pull over onto a cloud. So,
No, yeah, there's no emergency pullover up in the sky.
nope.
So yeah, I would say from a risk and liability standpoint, it's similar, right? So like you make a recommendation that's wrong or a mistake, you have liability risk, just like you probably would with that. So I do think there is a lot of similarities from the fact that there's a lot of testing time invested classroom and then the hours you have to have,
Yeah.
the practical knowledge. And then there is risk and liability involved. And also when the federal government is involved, we have a lot of paperwork and compliance oversight. And that, well, I will also say is something that I get when I hire people, I get a lot of pushback. They're like, a lot of paperwork. And I'm like, it's the federal government. It's not me. I didn't create
And
any of these forms.
Same for our side as well. In my industry, we are directly liable to the FAA, and that is the
FAA, which is
Federal
a big
Aviation
oversight body.
Administration.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
in the same way, we have airworthiness directives, service bulletins, like I could name 10 different things, right, that we have to, and I will say this,
Comply
I
with.
actually enjoy the paperwork and the reading through it and that kind of stuff. So that's, for me, honestly, a green flag in terms of it being translatable over to something like a CFP.
Yeah, that is one thing that I think isn't talked about enough. There are a lot of rules and regulations. They change on a regular basis. As you know, like everyone knows, like, okay, the Roth IRA, traditional IRA contribution changes, right? But so do all the like most of the estate planning rules change, tax changes, retirement laws change, right? Every year it feels like, at least in the last few years, you've had like some massive regulation overhauls. And so it generates new paperwork and distribution rules and contribution rules, right? So everything changes, and you're in a highly regulated industry with the FAA, and so is personal finance. It's highly regulated, and so
Yes.
yeah, these are, I think, every career path has a pro and con list, right? Like I don't know that anyone's ever been like, my job's perfect, I love 100% of it every day. Like,
If they say that,
I
they're
just
probably
think-
lying.
Yeah, I just don't think that's a realistic part. There's like a lot of parts of being an adult that are wonderful, and there's a lot of parts about being an adult that is not so fun, but it is what it is. And so I think the CFP path poses a lot of really great opportunities as long as you're aware of the things that go into it, which the way I look at it is like, you're most like in certain industries, you're just going to be in a regulated industry, right? And I don't,
Exactly.
that's just part of the job.
And instead of
you
being
really like
scared of
personal-
that, if you embrace it, if you embrace
Yeah.
it and understand its value and the ethical component and, all of those things, like it's less scary. It becomes less of a monster and more of a friend, I think.
Yeah, and I think you just choose what works for you, right? So like Wall Street was less regulated. I did a lot less paperwork because you're dealing with institutional clients. So the regulation isn't as, they assume everyone knows what they're doing.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And when it comes to retail, which is personal finance, like individuals, small businesses and so forth, there's a lot more oversight. So, but, working on Wall Street on a trading floor is a very different work environment, right? So that's,
Right.
I would probably say, is a con. There's
Yeah.
less paperwork, which is a pro. So you just, you choose what works for you. But I do think I 100% believe it's a great career path. I think it's very challenging to get into, stick with the education, get the hours. But I think if you're willing to commit to it, I think it's a phenomenal career path.
Right. So I was just gonna ask, there's obviously two routes I could go about, and that is, keep my full-time job. Financially, I would have to, right? Like I couldn't just not work.
Yeah, because you have good income. Yeah.
Yes, I do, and so that's obviously a factor that I've like thought a lot about. Is I don't know if I could make $60K right out the gate, like even if I took the test and was trying to get experience, after school, obviously, like I need to get a bachelor's. But I have a lot of credits, so I could probably, if I was pretty aggressive about that, do that in, 2 years. But then there's that whole, like, this is kind of where my mind goes. It's like, there's that whole other fact of like, okay, I'll either have to put a lot of my own money I would have to put a lot of my own money towards it, and probably have to take on student debt if I did it in an accelerated fashion. And, so there's that aspect that's like, okay, do I want to do that, right after I've paid off all of my debt? And so these are definitely this is the personal finance aspect here of my own finance. It's like, do I want to take this on? And then it possibly doesn't even work out. But like you said earlier, I think your 20s are really the time to do this, as long as you are kind of keeping everything else in line that sets you up for success in the future regardless. But yeah, I appreciate your insight a lot.
Yeah, I think that one other way you could do it is if you found a wealth management firm where you're located. I'm not off the top of my head, but if you found like a wealth management firm where they were looking to hire, and you would go hire in at whatever role, an admin role, right? Or office role. And then with the path of you start working in the office, seeing how things are run, and then you work your way up to, while working, so you have a job, that you start studying for you'd go to the undergraduate program, right? That would you'd have credits towards it, and you would do the one that you come out and you have your prereqs done for the CFP, which is great. And then study and sit for your CFP. But if you found a firm that would hire you with that trajectory, right? That would be another way to do it.
Because you can definitely set yourself up, I think, in that way as like an asset. And I've done some research on, like paraplanning and that kind of side of things, and it being sort of an into the industry. But I think if you had any knowledge on that in terms of like how doable it is, at what level of education can you do something like that?
So I think that you can go into a firm, depends on what the firm's rules are. The smaller businesses will be more flexible. I would say what I've often heard from business owners in this recent environment is it's challenging for hiring, right? And so the fact that you're interested in the career, you'd show up on time, some of those basic things are actually harder. Yeah, it is actually harder to find than you think. Like significantly harder to find.
I heard something. Someone said something. It was like, if you show up on time and do your job, you are already ahead of 90% of people. Like, and if you think about how many people that, I have a coworker that shows up like 30 minutes late from lunch or in the morning, like every single day. No ramifications, but they just accept that because they are so in need of mechanics, But that doesn't favor well for him.
No, but at this, if it's a challenging hiring environment at the moment, and so it has been. So I'm sure the owner is like, well, that's not ideal, but it's better than someone who doesn't show up every Monday, which I've seen.
We have to say,
yeah. As you settle a little, it's like, well, they're here most of the day, so not, probably won't get promoted or get a raise, but better than someone who calls out every Monday, which I dealt with, 8 Mondays in a row.
Yikes.
So you only stick on Mondays. So yes, I think showing up on time. I know, ironic. Showing up on time, being teachable, willing to learn, wanting to learn. I think a lot of those go a very far away. As you said, it's more than probably 90%. I've seen a statistic similar. Like if you can do these basic things, you're ahead of the majority. So if I were in your shoes with wanting to stay where you are, I don't know if there's any big firms there. Like, I don't know that there's like a Fidelity campus or a Vanguard campus, right?
Yeah.
But you could go and look for the small
Fidelity
shops.
Campus. I think.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, downtown Greenville. I always walk past it when I'm going to the beautiful park they have there. There is a Fidelity, and
they have training programs, the big firms. Yes. Oh, so you could look for a training program. They're very structured, which I think is great. Yes. You start off with the less glamorous jobs, but like, I started off in the call center at Bloomberg. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Learn a lot fast. And they're really great foundational programs at the big firms that they offer training programs. So if there is a bit that, if Fidelity's there or another big firm is there and they have a training program, I think that would be worthwhile looking at to see what they offer.
Yeah.
And what it looks like. And you're usually paid in the training programs.
Accepting less. Yeah, that's awesome. Because in terms of, if I would accept a job that had a lower salary, you know, if I could offset it by having my tuition paid for or doing a training program that would lead me,
Yep.
you know, like
And
when
they
I
pay
was
for
really
your
desperate.
licensing.
Yeah, that's awesome. When I was really, really like desperate and didn't feel like being in my field anymore for, you know, a mixture of reasons, I was like, okay, I could do a banking position at Chase and maybe make like $20 an hour and get, you know, $5,000 of tuition reimbursement. And it still didn't work out to be worth it in my mind. But yeah, I think, you know, even if it's not something that I start tomorrow, I feel like after I get my petty debts paid off, you know, and maybe save a bit for my wedding and increase my emergency savings, like I think I would be in the position to flex a little bit more, which I can kind of figure out like when I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it now. As you said, you could, you know, enjoy the nice salary you have and investigate, like look around in, you know, South Carolina and like, what are the big firms? What do those training programs look like? Do you have a friend of a friend who might know someone who's in one, right? Are there small wealth management firms around? Do you have any connections to anyone there? Or should you just cold call and say, I just wanted to know like what your hiring process looks like? You can do a lot of investigation over the next year to 2 years and then see if it makes sense at that point. Maybe then you're ready to move into a different career path, but you could do some of the like investigating now.
And I mean, just as an example, like one of the perks of donating to, they have a young professionals group that has a ton of people in finance, and they do the mixes, the like quarterly, mixes. And so I've gotten a business card of a great guy who runs he doesn't run it, but he works at a new like credit union that they really care about that personal interaction, all of that. One of my dad's best friends, he's a financial advisor for Edward Jones in Colombia. And, you know, like I have these, I've already reached out to him and I'm planning on, you know, chatting with him maybe when I'm more ready.
These are all great opportunities. Yeah, lots of options. And I think that if you know you're interested in personal finance, you can start to have those conversations, see what it takes, and kind of figure out what the right path in. But as you said, like I would get your debts paid down, increase your emergency fund, plan for the wedding, and enjoy yourself. I mean, you could do it at 25 or 26, you know, and still have a huge career.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So do you have any other questions for me?
I think for right now, that answered most of my questions. One kind of outlier random question.
Sure.
As someone who belongs to Gen Z, I get really worried about buying a home. I am constantly looking, you know, at Zillow listings, and I'm lucky. Again, I still technically live in a lower standard of living area compared to somewhere like Los Angeles or, you know, like even those bigger suburbs in California, Texas, all these places. But it is something that my partner and I have chatted about, and I think we would like to own a home. You know, I had to move into this duplex very quickly, and we had so many issues with it. Like I didn't have a toilet for like a week, like all this crazy stuff feels illegal. Like up until recently, like my AC couldn't hold lower than 80 degrees. And in the South, that's just like the humidity and everything. It just makes it feels unlivable. And it turns out that like the contractors literally didn't install insulation in the attic when they were renovating the place, which like, are you joking? And I had to fight with my rental property or agency to get them to come install insulation. You know, like those kinds of things. I'm like, yes, at least I didn't have to pay for those things. But with owning a home, if you make an educated, you know, purchase and you get the inspections done and you buy from someone reputable or ethical, like you don't have to deal with all of that stuff up front, you know? So I guess my question is just kind of, is it even possible to get, you know, like an affordable home these days? Like it probably won't be anytime soon, but I would like to get there.
Yeah, I think it's a great goal. I do think I'm curious to see what happens with the housing market. I do think the prices
Me
have
too.
gotten a bit elevated,
Yeah.
and we haven't really had a big downturn on home prices in a while, right?
Hmm.
So 2008 probably was the last time.
Yeah.
Um, so we've gone quite a long time with just appreciating. So what you can do, I mean, so the hard part, this is like in the 20s, there's like a lot going on. So like
Yeah.
wedding,
Everything.
house, yeah, it's like we got all the things. So I think that you could be more creative with the wedding cost and maybe cut that down a little with the goal of having money for a down payment. You do live in
Absolutely. Yeah.
a cost of living, but I do think there's like we talked about there's trade-offs. I think we did a podcast with my sister called like Wedding or Windows because
Stop. That's so funny.
yeah, I think that the podcast title was
Oh my God.
Wedding or Windows because the
Okay. I'll have to
quote
go
for the
listen.
windows they bought a house. Yeah, you should listen to that one. The quote for the windows was insane, but they felt like they really needed the windows, and I was like, well, you can't really have a big wedding and also get windows for your house. Like we need to choose. So they had a smaller 30-person, like last minute. I was like supposed to go to another friend's wedding. I had already committed. And he was like, wait, what do you mean you're not coming? I was like, well, my sister just told me she's getting married now.
It's my
So,
sister. What do you
you know,
mean?
he was like really upset. He was like, you just tell her you already RSVP'd to my wedding. And I was like, I don't know what to do. She decided to do windows and have a very small wedding now in like 3 months. Like, it was
That's
like very
awesome.
fast. So I think that buying a home is great. There are pros and cons like everything. Houses are expensive. There are always going to be things that come up. Nothing in a home generally is $100 ever.
No,
Like,
no, absolutely
no.
not.
There's
And
always
that's
big ticket
another
items.
aspect. Yeah, that's another aspect where I'm like, okay, it's one thing to get a down payment, but I don't want to buy a house unless I have like five to ten
More
thousand
cash
dollars
flow.
at
Yes.
least. Yeah, like in an emergency
Yes.
saving that pretty much would
Correct.
just be for housing emergencies because Murphy's Law,
There are
I feel like
housing.
you move into a
Yes.
house and it's like you need a new roof
Yes.
or your foundation is
Yeah.
cracked
Or your air conditioner has a leak in it,
Yeah.
like ours
Yeah.
does. And that's $2,000. I was like, I'm not doing it. We're going to add some
Mhm.
Freon to that sucker and we're going to call it a day.
keep it pumping.
I don't care. Keep it bumping. I don't care if it leaks. The leak is like, I'd rather lose a little bit of Freon than spend the amount of money on the
Patch it
fix.
up, yeah.
Yeah, the fix for air conditioner is $2,000. The Freon was $240. So I can add
Yeah,
Freon to this
that's a
thing every other
no-brainer.
year. Yeah, just totally no brainer. Anyway, so nothing's $100 expense. Even the Freon wasn't $100.
Mhm.
So, but I do think that now when we have the wedding, your wedding, other weddings, you just have to say, okay, like what is our priority? What will make us the happiest? And so like for you and your partner, maybe it's like, we want to have a wedding and we want to spend X, or maybe you say we want to have a much smaller wedding. We're going to cut the budget back on that because we really want to work towards a down payment and a higher emergency fund so that at 28 or 29, we can purchase something. So
Yes.
I definitely think it's attainable. I think you live in an area where it's really attainable. Like if you were in LA, I'd say,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
like
I
find
see
good rent.
I know, like I'm lucky again, my rent is so low. Like I'm paying we're paying 11.78 a month. Like that
Mhm.
for it's
Yeah.
a two bed, it's small, but like we even have like where I'm filming or recording right now, like I'm able to make a little music studio, and it's our like
Yeah.
creative room. So I don't know that I would have that, living somewhere like New York or Chicago and all that. So I'm definitely thankful for it. But, we would eventually, especially having a dog, like we'd like a fenced in backyard and
Yard.
like all these kinds of things that would kind of be life changing, in a day to day way.
So here's my advice. What I would do is I personally think doing a smaller, less costly wedding and saving more for down payment is a good trade-off, personally.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I agree.
it's personal.
That's the route.
I think that's a better route. And here's what I'll say. Start saving for the down payment. Like, so if we like siphon off some of the money from the wedding and some of it's down payment, some of it's wedding.
Mhm.
And then you're in a position you can always, right? I like optionality. You could say, you know what? We looked at the houses. They're too expensive. We'd rather just keep paying rent, but we're going to keep
Yeah.
saving for the down payment. So if an opportunity comes up for
Yes.
a property that we like, that's within our budget, we're ready to jump on that because you've saved the money. So there's nothing wrong with renting, especially when you have low rent. And you'll even hear a lot of like bigger social media stars like Lewis Howes, I'm pretty sure is a renter. He's never bought.
Wow.
So it's about the optionality, right? So
Yes.
having the ability to buy a house and choosing not to is a very different situation than being priced out of that. So
Right.
there's nothing wrong in your 20s saying like, we're saving for the down payment. We're not ready to make that commitment because it's going to change our lifestyle, right? If there's a huge rainstorm the weekend we want to go away and our basement is flooding, well, we're probably not going to leave, right? That'd be irresponsible because of the cost of the damage. So there is something really nice about the flexibility of renting. There are annoying parts for sure, like as you talked about.
No,
but
I
there's
appreciate
also the nice
the
part of like,
flexibility.
yeah, you can just take a vacation and of like, yeah, your apartment floods, that sucks. You have renter's insurance, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then you call the landlord and it's their cost, right? So
Right.
I would just start saving for it, knowing that you want to make sure that it's an option in the future. Whether or not you take the option will depend on where your life is.
Yeah,
And what your
with,
situation
with
is at the
something
time.
like the down payment, I have seen so many like mixed opinions about taking advantage of first time buyer
Home
loans
buying.
and putting zero down. And like, what is your general? Do you have a general like hard and fast rule? For,
I do
like,
not.
10%,
Yes, I do not like.
20.
Yes, I do not like zero. Do
I
not
don't
do zero.
either.
Personal
That feels
opinion
like a
is if
scam.
you can't save any money for the down, like unless you're doing zero down because you're keeping like 100,000 in cash because you don't want to put anything towards it. That's a different scenario. But generally speaking, if you can't save the money that you need to put something down, you're, in my opinion, not in the position to buy a home.
No.
Because if you weren't able to save $1,000 or 5% to put 5% down, you're not going to be financially prepared when there's a problem, and there guaranteed will be a problem.
Because exactly, if you don't even have money for the down payment, what's going to happen when there is that leak, that foundation crack, that, X, Y, and Z? So I agree 100%.
Or your air conditioner breaks when it's 110 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like,
that's coming up soon here in South Carolina next week.
Yeah,
actually.
so
It's
like,
going up to like 105.
Yeah, and so now the air conditioner broke. What's the plan? Or your basement floods. What's the plan?
Yeah.
You're going to live with black mold? No, you have to, so it goes on a credit card is usually what happens.
Oh God.
And then it starts to get
averse to that.
Well, that's
now.
what happened. It gets out of control.
Yeah.
Because it's not a luxury expense. You're not putting a vacation on it. It's like our basement flooded to remediate this. So especially in humid areas.
It's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe in putting something down. I don't think it has to be a hard, fast 20, depending on what you have in emergency funding.
Okay.
But I think that before you buy a house, you need to be in a financial position to do it, including the money down, the closing costs, depending on state, can be quite high, and the emergency fund. You need to be financially prepared for the decision. I think it's a big decision. And I'm not a believer that you have to own a house. I think you need to put yourself in a position that you don't get priced out of where you want to be, whether that's renting or not renting or buying. I think that if renting allows you to accrue a much larger net worth, then that's probably your best option versus being house poor and that's you're riding on a house sale for your net worth. I don't believe in that.
No, I don't.
So
it's hard. It's
hard.
That's about what I was expecting.
Yeah, I don't have a hard and fast rule, but I on the standpoint of owning a home is not the all end all be it, right? Like you don't
that's
have
a very
to own a home.
boomer mentality.
Yeah. You don't have to own a home to be financially successful. You don't.
Agreed.
If it makes financial sense to own a home, right? You're cutting costs, building equity, and in a financial position to take on that, then that makes sense. Right now, with where your rent is, probably you would spend more on a home. Will the home appreciate more than like the money you would have put in the market? Depends. We don't know.
Yeah. Because it is like rent, month to month, I'm paying this for rent. But in the same way that when you put money in investments, you don't know what's going to be on the other end. You don't know if you're going to retire in a market downturn. You don't know, it's the same way for a house, because what if there's this great job that like you absolutely do not want to turn down 3 states away, but the housing economy
doesn't sell.
Garbage.
Yeah. You're stuck. I've seen that happen. I had a girlfriend, she bought a house, great neighborhood, right? Was very competitive to get the house, got the house. Husband got a job in Florida, had a rental property in Georgia, right? Everything was going swimmingly. So now they bought the house in Florida, have the rental property in Georgia, have the house. It was another Northeast state. The house in the Northeast state was expensive, but was super competitive to get it. Great school district, great house, blah, blah. We'll sell We'll sell in a week. Didn't sell for a year. Didn't sell
Oh
for a
my
year. Had to
gosh.
sell the rental property because they're losing bleeding money on the house in the Northeast.
Oh,
Bleeding.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
not
tough.
ideal.
I mean,
So like you
that'll
only hear
change your life.
Yeah. It's also really stressful in a relationship.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
not a fun conversation every night to be like, oh, we're bleeding. You know, the tenants fell through. They couldn't get tenants. It was like really bad. And so I think that unfortunately with social media, it's like the highlight reel. And I think it's the same thing with real estate. All you hear is how amazing real estate is. You do no work and make a ton of money. I don't think that exists. I
No.
really, really don't think you're showing the full picture because there's a lot of
No.
ways it can go sideways. As much as it can go up, it can be a really hard path as well. And
Yeah.
so
You got to be
I think it's all
careful
about
of Instagram and TikTok and the easy money. I mean, anytime someone says,
Yes.
"Oh, it's easy to make money doing this," run far, far away. I feel.
Yeah, that's what I think. And so I think that you really always need to let the numbers drive the decision. And so if you guys found a home that you really liked and you was like a little bit larger than where you are now with an outdoor space and then the mortgage numbers come in comparable, yeah, then maybe that makes sense. And you're willing to take on the responsibility of a home ownership. You're ready for that, which is a personal decision. I think that's great. If not, just keep saving. You'll be in the,
Yeah.
So
The worst that happens is
I
if
just
you
think-
decide, like, okay, we're going to rent for the next 5 years, that money can, or even, hey, you know what? For the next decade, we want the flexibility to travel X, Y, and Z. Throw that money in investments and let it grow even more,
Yes.
And I like, as long as you've got that long-term, sort of
yes.
mindset, because I know people get in trouble when they're like, oh, I'll just invest my down payment, and then they get ready for a house and it's like, oh, my down payment's 50% of what I put in. Oops.
Yeah, or like on the flip side, if you think really long term, like you never buy, you always live hand to mouth, right? So there's never really a lot for saving. So you're always renting and always hoping rent will be a certain percentage of your income and you're spending everything else. And then you get into retirement and it's like, wow, now you're priced out of rent, right? It's too expensive. Can't retire, haven't saved enough, so no option to ever buy a home. Those are the positions that I think are worth like looking at and being like, I don't want to be in that position. But I'll give you another example. I have a gentleman, he has rented his entire life. He's going to rent until he retires. Rent is the most economical situation. And when he retires, he's going to move to a different state and then he will buy in retirement. It will be his first time owning a home. He might not like it, so we'll see how that goes. But he's in a great financial position. He might not like it, but he's in a great financial position and will have rented his entire life. And, he might say, you know what, I actually maybe will just keep renting in retirement. But he has amassed enough of a net worth that it's a decision. Do you want to own? Do you not want to own? But he's in a good position because the renting was the best financial decision he could have made because home ownership would have taken away from his actual saving because he would have been paying too many like homeowner fees and maintenance and the down payment would have been really high. It was a very high cost of living area. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I think ultimately you need to have the math make the decision and not get caught up in like, you have to own a home because you don't. It doesn't, only if it makes sense should you own one.
Having been in this position, you never want to feel like you are backed into a corner when making a huge financial decision like where am I going to live or what job am I going to take? It like you want, again, coming back to the autonomy, you want that to be a decision that you made because you wanted to do it and it was favorable to your financial future.
Yeah, it made sense. And I will say that I've seen people be house poor and it looks really miserable.
Yeah.
Like very miserable.
It's very miserable. Been there. Been there and it's miserable.
Yeah. So I think what I would do is like you could listen to the weddings versus windows episode. I would recommend that.
Okay. I will do that.
And so I think that you just decide together like, okay, we were interested in saving for a down payment for a home, bulking up our joint emergency fund, house emergency fund. And then we're going to let that permanent investment drive the wedding, right? So maybe then we earmark $5,000 for a wedding.
Really interesting. Yeah, I had like through working through all of my spreadsheets and thoughts in my brain about this. I never thought about letting them be connected in a sort of ebb and flow kind of way, where okay, we know that even if like it's something personal, like we know this person, who has been renting a house is looking to sell soon, and it's in the exact place we want to be. It's in a, again, like exactly what we want. And we have that money towards a down payment and the wedding, it can kind of be like, okay, we're going to do a little 40-person wedding. And I think, again, as women, you always get worried, oh no, like people are going to be offended if I don't invite them. But I keep telling myself, the right people will understand and the wrong people won't. And that's a really quick and easy way to be like,
to differentiate. Yeah,
exactly. Like, you don't actually care about me and my goals. You probably shouldn't be at my wedding in the first place. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think that when you give yourself a little bit more of a budget, you can be really creative and it can be super special. The money doesn't make it special, right? It's like the reflection of you and your partner, right? And so, and then you could even say like, maybe we want to buy a house first and have like a backyard wedding. We just want to host people in our home.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways you can do both, but I think it comes down to like, you and your partner sitting down and saying like, okay, like what is more of our, like what will make us happier long-term? Like a bigger wedding, and that might be a yes. Or is it saving for both, knowing there's an ebb and flow there, right? Depending on situations.
No, it's really funny. Like, I never really grew up like imagining my wedding. Like, I would get eloped. I would go to a courthouse. I don't really care. But like, it's mostly coming from like, I know that that's something that's really, really important to her. And she, and it's not in a, I don't want to celebrate that kind of way, but like, I don't care to celebrate it. It's that they're just, I would maybe want to be like, okay, I want to spend money on going on a really nice honeymoon, and that's all stuff that you have to talk through as a couple, because I mean, I think especially that's something that I love about being in a queer relationship. It's like that communication there is like central to our relationship, Yeah. I wasn't going to say it, but no, but we try to absolutely understand like what is important to each other, like at all times, regardless of what it is, what it has to do with. It's just really, really important that we know like what's on each other's minds and where we're at with different decisions that are kind of hard,
Yeah, and these are hard things, right? So if it's more important to her than you, it's a compromise, right? Of like, let's talk through this and where are we going to allocate our finances. And so, yeah, I think it's a conversation, but I think it should be fluid, right? So it could change, like just because we decide this today, like, as you said, maybe this perfect property comes up and then maybe you could always defer the wedding, right? You can get married and have the celebration. I really think it's good to challenge yourself to think differently. Like that's more common in Europe. That's what I did. We did our celebration after we did our legal ceremony. It is common in Europe to separate the two. And so it can be whatever you want it to be, right? Like what we did was like completely unorthodox.
We're definitely leaning towards the whole smaller wedding, bigger reception at a later time, or, at a more affordable area. Like if we know someone who has a huge backyard, that is something that we could easily do.
But yeah, I think sit down and talk about like, because as we said, in your 20s, there's a lot of like, where do we want to prioritize and how do we want to divvy up our resources? And I think with the home, it's just important to make sure that I do think it's important to save for it and have it be an option. I don't think it needs to be today, tomorrow, but if you could, I think right now renting
rather than necessity. Yeah. I like that.
Option. It's an option. Yeah. It's not it's absolutely not a necessity, not with where your renting costs are at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an optionality.
Awesome.
But yeah, go back and listen to Weddings versus Windows, because that was, I had to have a little, my sister goes by Natasha on the podcast and I always very much enjoy her because she's very smart, but personal finance is not taught, obviously. So sometimes we have to have like little check-ins with Natasha about, it's a learned skill. She likes to defer a lot of it to me. So I was like, we're gonna have to chat about this. Because you can't afford to do both, we got to choose here, Weddings versus Windows, or house versus, wedding. That's another big choice that people make. And I think that you can compromise, but if you want to go big on both, like it's hard to do both, right? You have to choose, make a choice. Well, this was a super interesting conversation. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for letting me join. I was very excited when I got your response.
Oh, good. Yeah, this was lovely. And for all of our listeners, you can follow along. And if you like the show, please subscribe and rate us. And then you can follow us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.